Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, and welcome to our guest, Pat. I've known for many, many years, but I will start by saying thank you so much for your time today, of course.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you asking me.
I remember you from when I first started competing, and
Yeah.
I probably didn't realize how savage the sport of bodybuilding can be, if I'm completely honest.
You've
And
got to be in it to realize.
yes, and I started out so excited. And I know you're going to share this sentiment with me
Yeah.
that actually, physique development as a whole can bring so much to a human being, but it often gets, you become a competitor and you get lost in what you're maybe striving for. And we're going to talk about how you've had some struggles over the last few years with mental health, but I actually
There's no sport like it. There's no sport like it for that. None. Zero. And I'm a coach in nearly football, boxing, mixed martial arts. Trust me, there is no sport like bodybuilding when it comes to that side of what we're going to discuss today.
For sure. And you've spent many years in the sport, and this is why this will be such a good episode to give insight into, what that looks like as you progress in the sport, and also when you step away from competing, because we often get caught up in, right, fuck it, I'm going to do everything. And then it's like, what does life look like after you, come away from competing, right?
Yeah. I think the most important thing what I can teach today as well is, which is no disrespect to what's happening now, we started before the days of social media, right? Now, I don't believe in old school and new school, because school is school. We all get taught, right? You hear these people saying around the old school guys were better and the new school guys are not as good. We just did things differently. And the reason we did things differently is because on social media now, if I'm a bodybuilder now, I can see my competitors and I can see, like, for example, I'm 10 weeks ahead of them. I don't have to work as hard. But back then when we competed, you only saw the guys on the days of the show, right? So nobody wanted to be the one that looked bad. So we all worked hard to get where we were. So the standard of competitors back then was unbelievable because we're all chasing one goal, but nobody knew what anybody looked like. I remember placing 10th in a show, and I'm not just saying this, Sarah, being extremely happy because the 9 guys that beat me were either ex-British champions, ex-Mr. Worlds, ex-Mr. Universe. So, nowadays, not everybody, but some people get pissed off when I come second when there's only 2 in the class.
Yes. And it is, I'm really glad that sort of came out organically from yourself, because
it's the truth.
And it's certainly something I wanted to ask you, because I've even noticed this in my 12 years of competing. It's completely changed the dynamic of what the sport, I believe, could be, and in some respects should be, per se, if you know what I mean.
I understand. If in my honest opinion, Sarah, more people want to be stars than champions. I would rather win a British title, universe title, and a European title than have 500,000 followers on social media. If I'm a bodybuilder, competitive bodybuilder. Nowadays, there's guys that just get the pro cards. No, they're not going to do anything with the pro cards just to build up a social media profile and earn lots of money. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm not knocking these people. That's what they want to do. But then don't claim to be a bodybuilder then, if that's what you do. Be honest. If I've come in here being honest with you, and for me, when I first started bodybuilding, Sarah, I just didn't want to embarrass myself. I wanted to go on. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about losing. It was about getting on that stage and holding my own. It wasn't until I was still playing football, semi-pro, for 3 years while I was bodybuilding. And I'd get little articles in bodybuilding mags, great upper bodybuilder, great upper body, but his legs are crap. And I didn't know it was Ian Harrison, IFBB pro, good friend of mine, now lives in America, told me, stop running on him. They're never going to.
That's actually a very valid point. And it's
true.
Something.
True story.
I talk to, clients that express interest in becoming a competitor, and maybe they have a bit of background in running, and I did myself, and I got told.
Yeah, I was a sprinter.
You can't. I mean, there is elements as well, because you're putting so much into the weight training, etc. It's like the joints and the impact on that from something like running. You start to think, okay, so what do I want to maximize here? Is it the bodybuilding if I want to be super competitive? or is it that I want to do running as well? And maybe that will be of detriment, you know?
Bodybuilding was by default, Sarah. It was by default. I was a really good runner, sprinter, and a half decent footballer. I'm not saying it was spectacular, but I was a half decent footballer. But my football skills was more based on my pace rather than my skill. You know, I could go past players for fun. And then I remember going past a player down the wing one week and I felt something tight. Now, this is before what I knew muscles were, like hamstrings, quads. They were just legs to me, and I ran on them. Well, anyway, I popped a hamstring, which I didn't know it was called a hamstring. And then obviously I was advised, if you want to strengthen your legs, go and start doing some training, you know, in a gym. So there was no such things as really bodybuilding gyms back then. There were more sports centres that had weights in. So I joined a gym called Richard Dunn Sports Centre in Bradford years ago. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I watched people who were training legs, and then I kind of copied them. Do you know what I mean? And then I remember one guy come up to me. He wasn't a bodybuilder. He was just a big, strong man. And he said, "You're doing it wrong. What are you doing it for?" I said, "Well, I'm just want to build my legs and train my legs because I'm a footballer." He said, "Oh, next time you come in, train with me." So I met him and started training with him. He started teaching me how to squat properly. But then I found myself just like training weight. I was still playing football, but I'd come off on the football pitch unsatisfied. Yeah. And I wasn't happy till I was back in the gym training, just legs, because it were mainly legs then. And that's how it started. But then one day there was a powerlifting club that were in the corner. Powerlifting, which I didn't know were powerlifting. They were all deadlifting. And I think I weighed back then probably about 80 kilo, 81 kilo. And these guys left some weight on the bar and went off. Now, I don't know what 100 pound is, 200 pound. I just saw these, because you know yourself, Sarah, powerlifters back then were strong, but they weren't muscular like bodybuilders. So I saw these guys lifting. I thought, well, they're skinny. They're not big. I should be able to lift that. So I went to lift it, and I lifted it. And this guy come back and went, "What are you doing?" I went, "Oh, sorry, mate. I didn't know you were still using it. I just wanted to see what it was." He said, "No, can you do that again?" So I did it again. And it was 200 kilo. Oh. I weighed 12 stone 10, and it was 200 kilo. And he went, "In all the years that I've been training, teaching powerlifting, I've never seen anybody lift 200 kilo straight away. You know, they normally build up, they probably start at around 160 enough to get up." He said, "Have you ever done any powerlifting before?" I said to him, "What's powerlifting?" I didn't have a clue what it was. So anyway, he basically said to me, "I want you to come to a powerlifting competition." So I went, and I could lift, but I was called a guest lifter, which basically meant I could compete with the guys, but none of my lifts would be registered because I wasn't affiliated to any club. So I was allowed to lift, but they didn't count. Well, anyway, unofficially, I won the show. And then that's where I started. And then I just started bodybuilding then. Powerlifting, and got great success, went into a high-level British standard, won a few titles. But I was always into the Incredible Hulk program in the 70s. And I didn't know bodybuilding really existed. So I kind of I just like, it may sound weird now, but not in our world. I just like the look of huge muscular men, like the superhero type thing. My brother, we used to get 50 pence each, spending money, me and my brother. He used to spend it on chocolates. I used to spend it on Spider-Man, Batman comics and stuff like that. And then the Incredible Hulk came on television. And then one day I was watching Calendar, which is a local news station in our thingy, and there was this guy getting ready for the Mr. Universe competition called Basil Francis, who was from Bradford, and he was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. I mean, even by this standard, Ronnie Coleman, as good as Ronnie Coleman was, the first guy that ever stepped on stage that was a genuine 20 stone was Basil Francis. You Google it, he was about 6'3", and he weighed 20 stone with abs. And I'm not disrespecting Ronnie, because Ronnie's my greatest favorite bodybuilder of all time. But when he got a bit heavy, he got a bit extended. This guy was 20 stone with a flat midsection. Do you know what I mean? And if you Google him now, he's the only bodybuilder in the history of NABBA that in the same calendar year, he won the Mr. Yorkshire, the Mr. England, the Mr. Britain, the Mr. Europe, the Mr. World, and the Mr. Universe, all in the same calendar year. That's not heard of now. You know what I mean? That is not heard of, right? And then obviously he became my mentor, and kind of we can touch on further down the line, but that kind of just gives you a background how I got involved.
Yeah, for sure. And it's super cool actually, because when I remember you from when I first started out, I remember you, Sarah Bridges, and Paul Knight, because I feel
Yeah,
like you guys, we've spoken about it, you catch a
yeah,
vibe, and I
yeah,
felt passion from you guys. I really did. And that
yeah,
actually, what you've just described there, that shows me the passion has grown there. And it's like, wow, this could be something for me. And again, it's something that can get lost when you're just striving for that winning place all the time. Now, that doesn't take away from wanting to win, of course, but
yeah.
what you can get from this journey, the friends you can make, the
It's incredible.
yeah, the
Friends
life.
for life in bodybuilding. Yeah,
Yeah. And I certainly, I just remember seeing your smiling face. You would speak
yeah.
to, a lot of the competitors. And for me, I've got to express that gratefulness. And I'm not just saying it, but I
No, quite a
remember
few people have expressed that. I appreciate that.
yeah. And for me, I did not place in my first few seasons. It was fucking rough, but I was
Know
not
the feeling.
competitive. Yeah, I wasn't competitive, but I kept at it. And, that then led to success in the sport. But, someone like yourself in, a place of power in a
Yeah,
bodybuilding realm that I knew fuck all
yeah,
about, it was like, maybe, this person speaking to me, is that enough
yeah.
little encouragement to pursue it? And, obviously you were very good friends with Sarah, who did pass, but she was very similar, wasn't she?
Yeah, just say unbelievable. I mean, my everybody thinks one of my greatest achievements was becoming the first ever under 100 kilo British champion, which nobody can take that away from me. But in bodybuilding, my greatest achievement was working backstage, right?
Yes.
Because I had all the legends working backstage. I had your James Hollingsheads, your Nathan Diashers, your Sasson Harati. They'll all tell you, God rest his soul, obviously Luke Sando, I had them all. And when I was backstage, the first thing they used to say, we can relax, Pat's here.
Yeah.
We're not going to get rushed to go on stage. We're going to have plenty of time to go on stage. It's like a bodybuilding shows. It's like a cattle market, right? And nobody gets told. I control backstage, which meant I control the judges. I had the respect of the judges where I could say to the judges, listen, my class is not ready yet. So wait, right? And because I run a tight ship, they allowed me to do that. I'll tell you, one year I took a time off where I didn't compete or I wasn't working backstage, but I still go to the Britons because I still support that federation. And it was over 2 days, and there was 600 competitors over 2 days, right? This is probably about 8-9 years ago. And the people who were backstage hadn't a clue, right? And it was all James Hollinghead, they were all sat there, we're all in disarray, it was just absolutely mental. And then Sarah says, Pat, do us a favour. Can you sort out backstage? And what they was doing, I'll tell you what they were doing, Sarah. They was giving people numbers before they went on stage. And they could piss off and go outside for a smoke. So when they obviously went missing, you had 10 people that was due on stage that wasn't, you know what I mean? That didn't know where they were. They're outside or they're in the cars. So I literally got everybody backstage, took every single number of every single competitor, right? And stayed there and just give the numbers to competitors that were actually competing. So when you competed, you had to come get your number. If you didn't come get your number, it was tough shit. You wouldn't go on stage. And when I did that, I turned it around and the British were a success. And that was the best thing I've ever done. And I know Giles Thomas is a good friend of mine who's gone on to do great things. And Giles, when he competed, he didn't compete that many times. He came up to me, he says, the best time I've ever had on a stage is knowing that you were backstage there. And that means more to me than titles. And I've won titles in different federations and stuff. And the satisfaction and the joy that I knew, and it wasn't just the guys, it was the women as well. Do you know what I mean? I could go into a women's changing room when it was chaos, when everybody panicking, and calm them down because I knew them all personally. And what I did know more than anybody else is what it felt like. So it was relatable. So when Pat Warner said, "Calm down, don't rush, and make sure you get on stage in plenty of time, I'll give you notice," they believed me because I backed my words up. Right. So it was very important to me. And that's my legacy. What I want to leave in bodybuilding. Titles mean nothing to me. Right. It was great for the time that I had them. But now look how cheap titles are. And nobody values it anymore. Do you know what I mean? There's some people that go out and do value it. You still got some great bodybuilders out there, like your D Ashes and your Hollingsheads and our British guys and stuff like that. But the new breed that are coming along, which is no disrespect to them, it's not bodybuilding that's their first and most important thing. It's being successful, building up a brand, making money, which I've got no problem with. But let's keep bodybuilding true.
Yeah,
for the ones that want to compete.
Yeah, it's a topic that comes up a lot on the podcast, and it can be, you know, tricky because there's many areas to it, and it's like, where do we see bodybuilding going, right? And for me, it's quite confusing in some regards, because, you know, what I get from bodybuilding is very, very different to a lot of people. And like you say, there's nothing against anyone here. This is an open conversation.
Nothing. Yeah, of course it is.
And where does that lead, though, when you get so much shit on social media, so many different federations? It's so confusing. It's like, where do you even fit, if you know what I mean?
Well, the reason all these new federations are out and about is so people can be champions. You know what I mean? Now, there's guys who are in this era that would go back into my era and be very successful, very good. So, you know what I mean? Well, there's guys in this era also that wouldn't even win a Mr. Birmingham or a Mr. You know what I mean? And the pros, right? Now, that's not their fault, because whatever federation you join, if you're that best person on stage, whatever federation you're in, you deserve that reward. But bodybuilding is very diluted now, because nobody wants to be a bodybuilder to win a trophy. To be the best in the country, to be the best in the world. People now want to be a bodybuilder so they can be successful, so they become reality stars. Do you know what I mean? And all kinds of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So they can build a profile. I've trained people for years, as you well know, Sarah. I still get to this day, nobody wants to know about my CV. They want to know how many followers I've got. I've heard good things about you, Pat. Would you train me for the next competition? Yeah. Can I ask you a few things about yourself? Can I ask you a question first? Go ahead, ask away. How many followers have you got? Phone goes, put phone down. Because I can't help him. It's not my era. Do you know what I mean? You want hard work, you want dedication, you want honesty, come to me. You want me to build your brand. I'm not a brand manager. You know what I mean? So I'm not that kind of person. And that's where bodybuilding is going. Great that it's going away where people can actually make money from the sport and spin off from the sport. Because I worked for years and years and years, and I was at a very high level, world level, and there were darts players that were earning 100 grand drinking beer while they were throwing darts. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, yeah, you might spend 10 hours on a dartboard practicing, but how come you've got all that money in your sport and there's none in ours? You know, and the subject that we're going to touch upon is drugs itself, PEDs, so we know why. But if you do a list now, and back then, the top 10 sportsmen who take PEDs, bodybuilders are not even in the top 10.
Yeah, very relevant.
Not even in the top 10. You know, we're below cyclists and other sports. And that's a fact. That's not me because I'm a bodybuilder talking rubbish. That's a fact. You know what I mean? Do your research and you'll find out that we take fewer PEDs than sports that don't even need it.
And that
is cosmetic, because it's cosmetic now.
Yeah, and it is certainly a grey area. Now, with the podcast, one of my first sort of missions, I almost saw a gap in the fitness space or the bodybuilding space where a lot of people won't talk about their use, which is fine. But
it's fine, that's up to them.
Yeah,
avoid it. It's the sport we're in.
Yeah, what I've certainly found is that it does cause people coming into the sport that are natural. They think they think that a physique is attainable, staying natural, and they're not being realistic with their expectations. But also, there's a lot of coaches, unfortunately, that run high doses with females and they do not inform them of the side effects. Now, of course, as an athlete, if you're going to take something, I'd recommend that you research it yourself. But I get a lot of horror stories off the back of the pod.
Oh, well, if you've had some guess, you can guess how many I've had. I've trained with some of the best female bodybuilders. Do you know what I mean? I've been looked after some of the best female bodybuilders. One of my all-time idols is Paula Birkinshaw. Now, Paula Birkinshaw was the person who taught me, still a lifelong friend now, how to train legs properly. Yeah, you heard it first, guys. A woman taught me how to train legs.
Yeah.
And that's a fact, right? And that's a fact. And I've worked with some greats like Rosie Hart and stuff like that. And women have come up to me and asked me about PED use. I turn around and say, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Right. And I tell you why I can't help you, because I don't have periods. You know what I mean? I don't suffer from the menopause, right? Which I know that's going to have a effect on. So how can I advise you on something that doesn't become natural to me? Don't get me wrong. If there's people that I know that might be able to advise them better, I'll send them in that direction. But as a coach, all I can say, I'll take you around the gym and I'll sort your nutrition. When it comes to PEDs, I cannot help you because the female body is different to the male. So I can't. Yeah. And I never have done. And I never advised them. You know what I mean? If I can help them and send them in the right direction, I'll do that. But the first thing I will say, where's the foundation? You know, because you get people walking into a gym now, and the first thing they want to do is take a PED. I'm being honest now and forthright, as you know, I always know all you. I didn't start bodybuilding until I was probably about 32. Okay. So which is late for a bodybuilder. Because I didn't know the sports, I was a very good sportsman. So about 32. I started training properly, seriously, because I was powerlifting at about 18. First time I used a PED was at 33. Wow, right? Yeah. So that's 15 years of training. That was my foundation. And the only reason I got into PED use was I was advised properly. It was more for training and recovery. It wasn't for building muscle mass, right? Because building muscle mass comes down to training and eating, right? How many people, Sarah, do you see in a gym that take a load of gear but still weigh the same? Still weigh the same. I've not improved. That's because they don't eat. That's because they don't eat. If you think you can walk into a gym, take any PED without eating, without training, without sleeping, and you're going to look like Ronnie Coleman, you're more delusional than you think you are.
Yeah, and this is where
it's just a little cog in. It's just a little cog in the wheel.
Yeah, and this is what, in my mind, it's like it's a performance enhancement. It's not. It's not. You know. Yeah. But it is certainly. It's so. You know, people can get hold of PEDs easier now. Yeah. Their friend takes it, and then it's like, what is your diet like? Do you train regularly? Do you have training intensity? And all of those questions, and you said sleep, which is something that is certainly underrated.
Very underrated still now. I mean, my friend competed, I think it was 2009, 2010. No, it was slightly after me because I won in 2009. He was 70 kilo class. I'm not going to mention his name. He won, he had no money, right? And this is when the Britons were over 2 days. And his training partner left him on the Saturday. He slept in the underground car park, right, at the, what was it called now? Theatre Royal or whatever it was, you know, the main theatre in Nottingham where we used to have the Britons. He slept in the car park there because he didn't have no money for a hotel. His mate abandoned him because his mate was supposed to go back, take him home, and then bring him back the next day from Bradford. He didn't. He left him. No food or anything. He jumped on stage the next day, no food or anything, won the British Championship at 70 kilo. He was natural. He was natural. He was natural. So it'd be all them enhanced athletes, right? All them, you know what I mean? And because leading up to the Britons, he worked hard, he trained hard, and he kept his nutrition up. Didn't believe in taking these PEDs, and he beat everybody to become a 70 kilo British champion unenhanced. So it shows how the rest of the tools, what you've just talked about, are important. You know what I mean? Get them right. The only thing you're not going to luck out, but if you're 70 kilo, you're not going to go on stage and be a 100 kilo monster, are you? So you can achieve a 70 kilo physique naturally. You know what I mean? You only have to look at certain guys that compete naturally. Das Cooper, for one, who's an unbelievable bodybuilder. David Kay is probably one of the best bodybuilders in the world, right? Natural or unnatural. I look at his physique, and I just look at his physique and I see it flawless, right? And he only weighs 80 odd kilo on stage, right? But this guy regularly squats 300 pounds, regularly deadlifts 300 odd kilo. Do you know what I mean? And that's unenhanced. You know what I mean? So you can live that life. And then we see some great physiques enhanced, but we also see some terrible physiques that are enhanced as well.
Yes, for sure. And also, we spoke at the start about life beyond competing. Now, yes, I get it. We go in and it's like, I don't fucking care. But you can talk, we can talk about how your life was stepping away from competing. And for a lot of people I speak to, it's not an easy, when you hang up your trunks, as it were, and it's like, what does life look like beyond that if you are pushing high doses of PEDs?
Well, when I retired, I wasn't retired. I was always coming back. I was just training. Hopefully, I'd come back and do the Masters, Olympia, or something. I always had dreams about doing that, but I just got so used to being backstage, helping other athletes. I still kept training. I promised comebacks every year, and I always put them off. I always put them off. But I think deep down I knew I wasn't gonna compete again, because in 2009 and 2010. Around that era, everybody said it. All the top pros said it. Yeah, the Aboos, yeah. Jonathan, I should have turned pro that year.
Yeah.
I didn't, right? And I wasn't sad that I didn't think I got ripped off. Zach Kahn, who took me overall that year, was awesome. I went to the Arnolds where the top 5 could place and get a pro card. I did the under 100 kilo. Clearly, I was in the top 3 or 4. Everybody said it, including pros. But you go to the Arnold and it's all, most of these amateurs that have gone to the Arnolds, I've got from all over the world, I've got big sponsors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, they're going to place high. Now, it wasn't for me. I wasn't upset because I got 7th in the Arnold, right? Just missed out on the pro card by 2 spots. But there must have been 25, 30 on stage that year. So you'd see the 30 of the guys, best bodybuilders from all over the world, and I come 7th. That in itself was an achievement, especially my first Arnold's. But my point was, I killed myself to get in that condition. Condition is, you ask any top bodybuilder in the world and they'll tell you they only hit that once. Ronnie hit it in 98, 99. You know what I mean? Jay Cutler hit it in 2009. You've got an all-time best. You can improve, but you only hit that once. So imagine me hitting that once and not winning. And when I deserve to place. Back of my head for the next 7 years that I competed, I never give 100% again. I know now. I didn't know then, because I thought, well, it killed me to look like that. Yeah. And I thought, why am I going to kill myself to look like that and come nowhere? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So in reality, my career started and ended when I won the British title in 2009. Looking back at it now, I do believe that. Then, obviously, I didn't. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's the mental side of it. And then, in a bit, we're going to touch on my illness and why I had to come away from training and stuff in general. Do you know what I mean? And it was, I can say now, it wasn't even PED use. I've had a heart problem since I was a young kid, and I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know. But we'll touch on that later on. Do you know what I mean? Because the first thing I asked I've had my same doctor for 20 odd years. I've got my bloods done on a regular basis. So I'm honest. And that's why I'm on this podcast with you and selling it to you and nobody else. First thing I asked my doctor when I came round after having the cardiac and being in a coma was, how much did PED use play a part? Well, I got my bloods done for the last 20 years on a regular basis. And he sat me down and says, it would be very easy to tell you that it was, but no, you've had a condition for a lot of years. But I tell you what did play a part, obviously because I'm in my 50s now, training like a 20-year-old when I was in my 50s. Because it takes its toll, doesn't it? People don't understand that. Do you know what I mean? You don't train harder. You've got to train smarter. But because I was still physically strong and I could still outlift everybody else, it wasn't my ego. I trained like a machine for years. So when I woke up in the morning and I went in the gym and I still had it in my locker, I did. You know what I mean? The only thing that saved me was I had got regular massages and stuff like that. But I could have very much ended up like Ronnie Coleman. Because you can ask anybody in the training world. I was a very, very, very strong man. 7-plate squatter for reps. Do you know what I mean? 8-plate deadlifter. Do you know what I mean? 200-pound dumbbells. You know what I mean? I was a very, very strong man. 240-kilo bench pressing. Do you know what I mean? And I'm lucky that I didn't have no wear and tear, because I could have very easily been like Ronnie. you know, and had all them injuries and stuff like that. A little bit of luck, right? Because that's all you can put it down. Can't say I train smarter than anybody else. I train smart. But when I look back at it now, and I see a lot of the bodybuilders that are broken down, there, but for the grace of God, I could have been very easily one of them bodybuilders. You know what I mean? And that's what, in the end, with a little bit of the stress and the not backing off, that's what my doctor said, put more stress on me to break down, because I didn't know when to back off. A performance car can't drive 100 miles an hour all the time, can it? You know what I mean? It's got to turn the corners, it's got to drop gears, it's got to go into 30, 40 before it builds its speed up. Well, I never did that.
Yeah.
And it hurt me.
This is the thing, isn't it? It certainly is. I literally did a post about this today. At first,
Yeah.
I used to think, oh, I don't need to have time away from training. I don't want to have rest days, etc., etc. Again, I learned the hard way, you know, it doesn't work like that. And there's a certain element of experience in the sport, right? You know, being part of sport, you understand it more, etc. And it's learning that doing more, as in, you know, excess cardio, more steps, more weights, etc., etc. It's like, what is the quality of your training? And when I look back at my own training, I think I wasn't training at the intensity I do now, because there's no way I could go to the gym 6 days a week and do that now.
No. You know, the weird thing about it, though, Sarah, it's like you're very experienced yourself now. You've been around a long time, so don't sell yourself short there. And you train other people, and you give people other advice. Why don't we take the advice we give other people?
This is what I say. I tell my clients every week.
Why don't we?
It's like, right, we need to manage recovery. We need to do X, Y, Z. But I've been so shit at it myself, and I'm like, what is wrong with me?
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. And it's almost like we're blinking when it comes to ourselves. But if somebody come to you and asked you advice, you'd give them the advice, which was honest and forthright. Then you go home and go, well, why the hell don't I do that then?
I'm the same as you, though, Pat. It's never from ego. I just want to do well, you know. I love it.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I love it. It's, well, I mean, we might as well touch on the subject now. Yeah. It was around 2019 when I first got ill, but I didn't know I was ill. I go through stages where I was thinking about, right, I'm going to make a comeback. I'm going to get on stage again. But I always train all year round, keep myself in shape. I'm never out of shape. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a proper off season. So I started training. And my weight crept up slightly, because I've never had a problem in putting weight on. PEDs or no PEDs, I could put weight on. I could get up to 280 pounds comfortably.
No.
Yeah, easily. Every I've ever been is 296, and that's at 5'10". I'm not saying it was a good thing, but I could get big. My problem was, every time my weight would go up, obviously I'd have low back problems, I'd be knackered. But I've always been very, very fit and very flexible. So when I used to put the weight on, I'd pile through, because I thought, 4 or 5 weeks' time, I'll be able to carry this weight, no problems. I'll get used to carrying it. Well, I used to take my granddaughter to school or pick her up, and I could hear myself wheezing like I smoked 100 fags. Now, I never had breathing problems. What weight? I struggled with low back problems because it got tight, because obviously my weight had crept up. But normally when I started doing the cardio and stuff like that, it went away. Now, the breathing problems never went away, and I didn't know what they were. I remember I used to, obviously when you've got grandchildren or children, you do videos for memories. Yeah. So I remember picking her up from school, and she's so excited to see me, she's running towards me. So I started filming her. And then I sent it to my daughter. And then my daughter says, Dad, you sound like you smoke 26 a day. So what are you on about, you? She goes, that video, look at that video. So I looked at the video, and I was like and I thought, eh? But I thought, there can't be no wrong with me. Because when I was in the gym training at night time, I had fantastic workouts. I wasn't out of breath. I was more out of breath when I was just sat at home or just getting to the toilet, and I couldn't understand it. So anyway, I thought, you know, Christmas, I'll do something about it. Christmas time, I woke up one morning, my wife was at work, and I just didn't feel right. So I rung the NHS helpline and told them that I, just having problems with breathing, but no thingy. Then the line went dead. She goes, right, I'm going to call an ambulance for you straight away. So what are you on about? She goes, I've never heard breathing like that in a long time. I'm calling an ambulance. So anyway, I got rushed into A&E, did all the blood tests, did everything. Couldn't find anything wrong with me. Right. Then I thought I had a tumor type thing on the back of my head and stuff like that. And it turned out that it was nothing. this anyway. But because I went into this. I don't mean this in a bad way, but I wasn't dealt with how I should have been dealt with, because I'm in hospital. It's busy. They've seen this big muscular bodybuilder. They've gone steroids.
Yeah.
And left me alone. And it's the NHS are phenomenal, because they actually saved my life further down the line when I'll tell you. So it wasn't that, but I knew I was being tricked. Well, it's like an alcoholic would go in. Well, if he wants to drink himself to death, smoke himself to death, that's him. So there wasn't really. But then this doctor came in, who trained, had big arms, and he came up to me and said, "What's a fit man like you doing in here?" I said, "I haven't a clue what's wrong with me. This is what I know, how I'm feeling." He said, "Leave it with me. The specialist has come on." He went, got the specialist. Specialist come. He said, have you ever had any illness problems? I've never been ill in a day of my life. I take my bloods on a regular basis. I take PEDs. So I told him straight, it was brilliant. So he went, did some tests. Nothing came back. He said, "You're all right. We'll send you home, but we'll bring you back in and do some further tests." Went back in to do some further tests, and the doctor says, "You've got a heart condition. Boom, we're going to do an operation, but we don't need to do one now." And I went, "What kind of operation?" I said, "We're going to have to put you a defibrillator in." I said, "You're joking." So this is like gone from never been ill a day in my life, so they're going to cut me open and put a machine in. When I spoke to my doctor, and he says, "Right, you need to decide, right, when you're going to have this operation done." Now, this is first week in October. It's like the 1st or 2nd of October in 2020. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Let's get Christmas out of the way."
Yeah.
And then obviously when you come back in New Year, and we'll decide that when we're going to put this defibrillator in. No problems. A week later, because it's COVID, don't forget 2020. A week later, I'm training at my friend's house. I'm personal training him. He goes inside, gets a protein drink for me after we'd finished training. I wake up 8 days later in hospital in Wythenshawe, Manchester. He came outside. I was on the floor. True story, this. He thought I was lying because of the workout we had, which wasn't, because it was an easy workout. So he kicked me. "Get up, you sausage." You know, like you do. He said as soon as he kicked me, he knew something was wrong, because I had my back to him. Yeah. He never done CPR or anything. So anyway, he turned me over, and obviously he's pulled me away, and he's obviously ending up saving my life. But he's called the ambulance. The ambulance is 45 minutes late, right? Because I can't find it, because we live in this gated community. Normally, emergency services, they have what they call a certain time to get to you when you're serious, like I am, 20 minutes or something like that. Or if there's not, they guarantee it's going to be TOD, which is time of death, right? By the time they found me, they thought I'd already gone. So they were taking the time to get out of the ambulance, putting the suits on like they do, thinking they're attending a deceased body. Do you know what I mean? And my mate is shouting and bawling, and he couldn't understand why they were taking the time, because obviously he'd been at me for about 45 minutes, and he didn't know how long it had been. They turn around and says to him, "You need to calm down. You need to calm down," because he's 6'3", big, powerful man. His emotions are all over his place. One of his best mates is lying on the floor in his garage. Luckily, one of the paramedics was an ex-police officer. Came, calmed the mate down, explained to him what the procedure was. So they started working on me. Obviously, couldn't bring me back round, defibbed me, couldn't bring me back round. But obviously, he was so strong, he must have cracked my sternum. So basically, they asked him then to work on me again.
No.
For another 15 minutes. Can you imagine that? And he's going, why me? You're the specialist. He goes, "Well, whatever you've done, and you're clearly stronger." And then they called the air ambulance. And I got airlifted to Wythenshawe Hospital. And basically, I was on life support, and they basically told my wife, "Get all the kids over and stuff. You know, we're practically going to give him his last rites. He can't breathe without the machine." Anyway, just before, obviously, my wife's telling all the family, "This is probably the last time you see your dad." I started being responsive, and I came round, and I'm here to tell the tale.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
After that, you know, I remember when I saw you at that gym, we was 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
What did that actually feel like for the listeners to get some insight, to come around from, you know, essentially a coma? And was it like, where am I? What was that like?
It was weird. It was weird because obviously, people don't understand, which I didn't know. A heart attack and a cardiac arrest is two different things. All right. And for those people that don't know, I'm going to explain. You can be at the gym, you can have a tightness in your chest and carry on training, go home, and then it eases off. A couple of days later, it's tight again. So you go to the hospital and they say you've had a heart attack. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's what you've had. Cardiac arrest, you've got to go. You've got to be brought back. So in essence, you've got to die. Your heart has to stop, and then they bring you back. And that's the difference. Do you know what I mean? So I had to be resuscitated. Whereas if heart attacks, you don't have to be resuscitated. You can just literally have them and not realize them until somebody tells you. You know what I mean? So for me, when I woke up out of my coma, which I didn't even know I was in my coma, the first thing they said to my wife was, listen, his brain's been starved of oxygen for such a long time. By the time we got there, he could literally not remember you, right? So it could be brain dead. So be aware of that. You know, it might look the same, and he might look at you and think who you are, right? Do not tell him who you are. Let's see if he remembers on his own. So that's leading up to the story I'm going to tell you. So and then anyway, I've come out of my coma and they've moved me on to, I've gone from intensive care unit to critical care unit, or the other way around. I can't remember which way around it was. But anyway, I'm sort of like waking up and I'm seeing these other people in front of me with like these machines going up and down to help them breathe. So I know I'm in hospital, but I'm thinking, is this a dream? Because why would I be in this? If I were in hospital, why would I be in a section like this with people, clearly because my brain's still functioning, that are really, really poorly? Then this is the funny part, Sarah. All I remember is floating like the Matrix. I thought, why am I floating? And I saw this white light. But then I thought, yeah, well, like that. Then I thought, my groin's hurting. Why is my groin hurting? So when my eyes started to focus, because I was so heavy, what they've done is they've used one of them hospital hoists to put me in the bed. And so I didn't. So when I'm actually thinking I'm floating, I'm not being floated. It's just that they can't lift me up and they try to get me to put in this bed. Do you know what I mean?
I guess for them, like you said earlier about when, you know, they first come out, and there's those perceptions of when you see a heavily muscled person, whether that's a female, there's always that for, okay, they're pushing gear, but there's also that, like, you know, people don't look at the logistics of being a heavy muscled person.
They don't. Do you know what? You know what also saved me as well? What was my saving grace? Within Shaw Hospital, best hospital in the world. I don't care what anybody says. Phenomenal, right? Because I had my medical history where I've had bloods and stuff all the time. They took me very serious, right? They treated me like an athlete, not a guy that took gear, because they had the medical history. And my consultant were very honest. He goes, if you'd have just come into this hospital full of muscle, no history, we're saying steroids all day long. There's no two ways about it, right? But because we could check your medical history and we knew you did your bloods, you looked after yourself, we could find out there was nothing wrong with your liver, your enzymes and stuff like that. We knew you was a serious athlete. But if it wasn't for your medical history, like this is why it's very important for people to go get the bloods and stuff like that done, just so you've got a record that if you do get ill, they can say, right, we know what's wrong. If you don't, and you're a bodybuilder, you're just a guy that just takes a lot of drugs. You know what I mean? So I was treated like a proper patient, and nobody wants to be in hospital, but I was in hospital for 7 weeks during COVID, a lot of times by myself, and I couldn't have been treated any better.
Yeah. And when you had that sort of return back to normal life and home life, what did that bring initially, sort of getting back into to being in reality, as it were?
You know, the truth, the first time, obviously, before I had the shock, the first time was nothing. Because don't forget, I don't remember passing out.
Yeah.
I just remember waking up in hospital. So there was no trauma. Yeah. So for me, there was no fear. I just got back into training. It was eventually when I realized that obviously, rather than putting a defibrillator in, they should have put a pacemaker in to pace my heart. So the defibrillator went off a year later, and it shocked me 3 times. And I could have been in the middle of a fight with 20 people and I felt less pain. And that's when it all changed. that I had something to think of what happened, and then all the trauma came then, all the mental health issues came then. I was scared I couldn't even walk by myself. I couldn't even stay by myself. I'd stopped driving. Technically, I could have drove last March. I've not been in a car since, in terms of I can get in taxis and stuff, but my mental health has took a absolute battering. Now, I'm old school. I'm from the, excuse my French, man the fuck up brigade. Yep. That's where I come from. And I'm telling you now, everybody that's listening, mental health is real. Real. You know, this is Pat Warner. Everybody knows who I am. I'm always laughing, always smiling. Mental health is real. And I suffered it as bad as anybody could ever suffer. You know what I mean? I was at home sometimes thinking, it sounds, I can be honest because it's you. I wasn't suicidal, right? But at the same time, if I didn't wake up the next day, I wasn't bothered neither, if that makes sense.
100%.
You know, I didn't want to harm myself or anything like that. But if I went to sleep and I didn't wake up the next day, I thought, well, that's better than the life I'm living now.
And that's not
that
you.
Was me. And that's not me. So that was me at my lowest point. Yeah. I didn't see nobody for 18 months. I kept a small circle. I video called a few people. I never went out, never went anywhere, because I didn't want the pity. I didn't want somebody to tell me I look well when I really didn't. I didn't want him to go, oh, Pat, you look great. And somebody's back turn, he looks like bloody death warmed up. Didn't want that. I wanted to go out and see people when I knew I looked well and when I was ready. Because, you know what I mean? Because they wouldn't understand that. If I'd have gone out and saw them and they said I look well when I didn't, that would have put me back further. Do you know what I mean? That would have ruined my mental health even more. You know, I'd like to, you know, shout out to obviously the guy that saved my life, Hashim Raymond, who was one of my closest friends. Kerry Kays, who was always there for me, and and obviously my family and friends, and my wife was my best friend. Paul Smith and Kelly from Time 4.
Yes.
You won't meet two better people. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And the people that got me in the sport that are still friends after all these years, 40 years, Paula Birkinshaw, Colin Wright, Basil Francis, these guys, you know what I mean? You know, like I've been involved in bodybuilding for near on 35, nearly 40 years. And I still have the same friends way from back then. You know, nowadays you're in this sport and the fair weather friends, you get training partners that fall out with each other. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm very blessed to have the same. And I didn't realize how respected I was until I went into I had messages from all over the world, movie stars. Mark Rhino Smith, the original Gladiator, who's a movie star now, very close friend of mine, I always kept in touch. Flex Lewis, who I first met when he was 15 years of age. If you ever speak to him, he'll tell you. He was sending my missus his direct messages, whatever I can do, whatever I can help him with. That's when you realize how loved you are. Do you know what I mean? It's not. I'm not saying it as a brag or as a boast, but I'm just saying it as a fact that it's nice to be respected in this industry for something you've done, right? I could show you a post now where Flex Lewis said to me, "You believed in me when nobody else did. You told me that I was always going to be something special." Because I seen him guest pose at the Kerry's Northwest show at Warrington. He was 15 years of age, and Kerry had him guest posing. He gave him, I think, 2 tubs of Pro Peptide and stuff. And I'm not joking. That is when bodybuilding was packed in every qualifier, swinging from the rafters. This kid was on stage, and if you knew bodybuilding, you knew he was going to be a superstar, right? I was competing that day. And I was in great shape. I'd just come back off of winning a NABA UK title. And I didn't get the cheers that this kid got. You know what I mean? And I got presented with I come second that day to Dennis Francis, who went on to win his pro card. So Dorian come up and took a picture with us and presented us and stuff like that. And Flex Lewis then was incredible. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't huge. Do you know what I mean? He's only tiny, you know what I mean? But he had big arms and big legs, and you thought, I never thought he was going to be Mr. Olympia or that. So I'm not going on record and saying that, but I knew he was going to be special. Do you know what I mean? Because he was like Wayne Rooney when Wayne Rooney first come on the scene. 16, he was like a grown man, not in his height or his stature, but in his attitude. Yes. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, these people, like my people, they're friends of mine. And I don't like people like who, you know, go these, you know, they talk about men's physique and go board shorts or surfers or stuff like that. Ryan Terry, good friend of mine, right? We went to the Arnolds together. Ryan Terry's got some of the best legs you'll ever see on a bodybuilder, right? And he wears board shorts. I'm not joking. You look at some pictures where Ryan is showing his legs, the conditioning, the size, the shape. There shouldn't be in a pair of shorts.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I don't, in this sport of bodybuilding, I give props to everybody, and like that's why I'm on your podcast. We're not here to shame or to slam anybody else or to say our era is better than your era. We're here to educate. Do you know what I mean? You know what I don't like? You'll see it yourself. You'll see personal trainers and they'll go on social media and say, I've just beasted my client. I'll go on and say, I've just educated mine.
It's such a shame, Pat, because I look up to you for that part you played in really in the early days, and the greats. What I would say, it's so fucking cool.
I appreciate it very much.
But it is like that's what I got into bodybuilding for. I was like, fucking hell, this is so cool. You can really get into something and really work hard. And of course, I'm sure you've seen it as well. And again, this is not to, slag anyone off or whatever, but
we're not them kind of people, are we?
No, but there is elements, of course, where in social media settings, and I talk about this, it's hard for me when people are moaning that it's hard and they've taken the choice to do a prep. Now, this is a choice, and you'll agree, Pat, there's people in the world that are fucking starving and they do have a choice. We choose to do this, right?
Yeah.
And it's so difficult because I know it's hard. And, particularly the first time, it's like, fucking hell. But there needs to be an element of, you've chosen to do this. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, but they only complain when something goes wrong, right? If it goes their way, they're not saying how hard it is. They're almost giving themselves a pat on the back. Do you know what I mean? It's like winning now is more important than anything. And I'll give you an example, and this is true. Obviously, because I've worked backstage for so many years and I've seen competitors. I once had a client. Now, I always try to attend the shows that my clients do, but I was actually working for Time 4 or doing a seminar, so I couldn't attend, but I was still access to the phone. You could get in touch. So anyway, my client ended up winning the show, right? So I went, I'm really pleased for you because I know how hard you work. It's really pleased for you. Because I actually thought I told them not to do a later show, but they was going on holiday. Yeah. So that's the show. So ideally, they didn't look how I wanted them to look, but they still wanted to do the show. So I still backed them. I said, if you qualify today, I'll be happy. If you don't, we know we're doing a show a little bit earlier than I wanted us to do, right? But they'd already committed themselves to a holiday. Mm-hmm. But a long story short, the one, I was buzzing for him. I was glad for him. And I couldn't speak to him, so I texted him and said, great news, great news. How many was in the class, blah, 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 like you do and stuff like that. Was it tough competition? Got no answer back. No answer. So I went, well, family and friends around him too busy. I'll speak to him later. So I've got friends that go to shows and stuff like that. So I rang a friend of mine and goes, how did my guy do today? You got through, Pat, but there was only him in the class.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? So then I spoke to him and I went, hang on a second. I thought you said you won today. He went, I did. I said, but there was only you in the class. Mm-hmm. That's not a win. That's you qualifying. Yeah. To win, you've got to beat somebody, right? That's what we call a win. If there's 20 in your class and you win, you win. If there's only you one in your class and you go to the Britons, you've qualified, right? You haven't won. And if you have that mindset that you think you're a winner, that you better get used to losing, because when 10 people come on stage and you come 10th, you're going to complain. Right, but you've no right to complain when you're actually starting off on the wrong foot by saying you're a winner when you're not. Did you qualify? Yeah, of course you qualified, but did you win? No, nobody was on stage with you. And you see now people are putting on, did this, won this, won that. And then if you follow them, you're saying, I was at that show. There was nobody else in that class. So where's your mindset and where's your head? For me, if I'd have won, or if I'm on the stage by myself and I qualify, I'm going on social media, which wasn't then. We didn't have it. I'm going, I'm qualified for the British finals. Unfortunately, there was nobody on stage for me to compete with. But I'll be knuckling down and try to bring a better package. Hopefully I can be competitive with people on stage. That's what I would say, and that's what most people would say. Nowadays, these people are going on stage by themselves and still saying the winners. When did the sport change for that to happen?
And this, all I can see is that it is social media. And of course,
Exactly.
I'm sure you're going to agree, because we're certainly on the same page. There's a lot of money to be made from new federations starting, so many different categories. You know, you can go to some shows and you can compete in maybe 8 categories and you pay for each category. And, you know, it's not what it used to be. But this is not, you know, our era's fault. And that's why it's difficult for us, because it's like,
Yeah. And listen, I understand people that have got a business and making money. I know some gyms up and down the country that charge you, this is a true story, to take a selfie. They've got a selfie room that you can go in and you have to pay like £5 a time to take a selfie. That's how the world has changed. Not like when I used to go to Kerry's gym, it was a little backstreet room with a little mirror in where you go in and he has a look at you and stuff like that. No, you know, now you've got to charge to take selfies. Some gyms. So it's a business, a massive business. But this is why most of the people that compete not to win, but to raise a status and profile. And this is why, in general, bodybuilding has suffered. There's still some fantastic hardworking bodybuilders out there that are 26, 27. You know, there's loads of bodybuilders from this new era. You know, Cuba Chileans are still in his 20s. There's guys like that, do you know what I mean, who work really hard and are fantastic. Do you know what I mean? But on the whole, I think bodybuilding's gone backwards, right? The top bodybuilders, even on the Olympia stage, right? Let's be honest, right? I can see and I can back, and who don't like me, they can say what they want. The standard on the Olympia stage is not the same. Not because the bodybuilders aren't as good. These bodybuilders are still fantastic, just that they don't get in shape anymore, right? So I'm not saying the bodybuilders from your Lebanon, Coleman areas were better bodybuilders. I personally think they were, but I'm saying that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the bodybuilders of this era, right, do not look like the ones from yesterday because they really, really always got in shape. You know, the last Mr. Olympia, I mean, you've got Samson Dowda, who's going to be an absolute freak of nature. I've known Samson when he was small. He's a proper gentleman. Do you know what I mean? If he's Britain's answer to Dorian or ambassador for the sport, we couldn't have a better ambassador because he's so humble. He's such a nice guy. Hollingshead's one of the honest. And also James Hollingshead is probably one of the strongest bodybuilders I have ever seen in my life. The guy is a freak of nature. Not just the weight he uses, he moves a 600-pound squat like there's 20 pounds on the bar. Do you know what I mean? I know to a lot of people he's controversial and he's outspoken, but Nathan D'Asher deserves more credit than he gets, right? He's the Sean Ray of England. Sean was very outspoken, right? And a lot of people didn't like what he said, but nobody could. Sean never turned up in shape. All turned up in shape. Do you know what I mean? Unbelievable. Backed up his bull. Nathan's the same. Right? I don't know which stage Nathan's has stepped on where you aren't going, wow. You know what I mean? Incredible. So there's still people out there that is still torchbearers for bodybuilding. But there's not enough bodybuilders that want to share their journey with people to try and educate, right? You know, at the end of the day, right? First thing I stepped into bodybuilding, I had the likes of Kerry Kayes around me, Basil Frank, every single one of them, Colin Wright. They all educated me, right? Paula Birkinshaw, Steve Riddick, they all educated me, right? And you know what? The first thing I wanted to do when I retired from bodybuilding or stayed in bodybuilding was not show somebody how to get massive, show somebody how to win a show, was educate them, because bodybuilding's a life lesson. The lessons you take away from bodybuilding, do you know what I mean? I mean, look at some of the most bankable stars in the world. You know, your John Cena's, your Dwayne Rock Johnsons, your Arnold's. They're all physique guys.
Yeah.
They're not winning Oscars, right? But these guys are all almost billionaires because people look up to people that are big, that are healthy, that are superhero-like. You know, so it's up to us if we look like that to say that, first and foremost, ignore the drugs, ignore the PEDs, ignore all that kind of side, right? Our work ethic is second to none. Yeah, it's very easy for somebody to say he wouldn't look like that without drugs and all that. I can show you 100 people around the country that take 10 times more drugs than bodybuilders, and you think they were natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but also,
and you think they were natural. You think they never took a drug in their life.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, you know, people do assume, and there's certainly things that go around. When I first started, it was like, is it cheating? And I didn't really know. Then I realized, you know, people are then using it to enhance, and there's a certain point. There's a certain point in your bodybuilding career where it's like, do I make that decision?
Yeah,
But
of course.
you know, if you've done it for a period of time, you're nailing the fundamentals, and Pat, you enjoy bodybuilding,
100%.
merit there, you know, and what you've just said there is gold. Have you got the education to go
100%.
through, you know?
Listen, the world's about drugs, medicine, whatever. Alcohol's a drug, smoking's a drug, right? You know what I mean? You know, if somebody comes up to me and I go, oh, what do you do? Oh, I smoke 20 a day. I'm gonna go, what a prick you are. No. You know what I mean? So these people that are taking drugs, right? Nobody criticizes them. But if you're taking a drug to enhance your physique, it's wrong. But if you're taking alcohol to poison your body, you know what I mean? Or you're smoking to poison your liver, you're still a great guy. Now, you know what I mean? For me, you know what I mean? A drug is a drug, right? In bodybuilding, if you compete at a PED level, you're still competing at a level playing field because everybody in that playing field is taking a drug, right? If you are natural and everybody's natural, it's a level playing field. But if you compete as a natural and you answer this question and you take drugs and get taking drugs, that's a bigger cheater than somebody that's competing with everybody that's on the same level playing field. Condoning it or excusing it, it's just being honest. People are asking us these questions, they're our opinions, and we're being honest on them.
Yeah, and if you create this taboo, for me personally, you know, if you decide to go down the PED use, and it's a decision I made myself after doing many years in sports. Now, this is not to say take this or take that, like you've just said.
It's you, but it's just you, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's for me to go, okay, guys, this is what I'm doing, but this is what I've done first, and I've competed and I enjoy it, and I've got education enough to make the right decisions, and I have a coach that looks after me. And for me, I wanted to do that. I wanted to progress into that. But also, it sounds like you're the same. I wanted to see what was possible by utilizing some PEDs.
Yeah, I did as well. I mean, you know, the great thing about me, right? I never took PEDs to get strong. I was a powerlifter. At 13 stone, I was outlifting guys that were 20 stone.
Yeah.
Right? I can say it now because I don't compete anymore. But I was freaky strong. I could go anywhere in the country and train with anybody. Right? The only thing people might have beat me on back then when I first started was intensity. Because anybody can lift big weight, but to continue to lift big weight on a regular basis, intensity, there's a massive difference. I learned that when Kerry taught me. But when I first started bodybuilding, I was as strong as anybody. You know what I mean? I could have gone into any gym in the country and match them on weight for weight, or sometimes even stronger. What I couldn't match them on was intensity because I didn't know what intensity was then. Do you know what I mean? I switched from a different sport. So I could go in there and do a 1 rep max and blow people out of water. Then I'd see these people doing same as me, but 10, 15 times over, 6 days a week. Nah, I wasn't ready for that. Do you know what I mean? So I had to teach myself and going back to that, educate myself. Do you know what I mean? For me, where bodybuilding's going now is, why are we not using this social media platform for guys like myself and guys have been around just as long as me or not as long as me, but have still spent, for me, if you spent 5 to 10 years consistently bodybuilding, you got my attention. You know, if you've done 2 shows and you put on your profile like this, tip my hat off to you, good achievement, but I ain't listening. You know shit, right? That's whoever you are, right? Because at the end of the day, if you work in Morrison's, right, and you've been working there for 10 years stacking shelves, and some guy comes for the first day and he's stacking shelves, he's still coming to you, even though he's stacking shelves, to say, is there a better system of doing this? How do I work this out? Where do I put that? Is it easier to do that? Want to come in the morning? You know what I mean? The job is irrelevant. It's the effort that you put into that job that's the most important thing. Do you know what I mean? You know, you could be a CEO of a company, right, earn millions of pounds, and I could be the cleaner in your company. Me and you are exactly the same person. Because you don't make your money without me cleaning your offices, without me keeping your business, you know, without people coming in. You've got rich people coming from Dubai or whatever, and they're going your toilets and it's a right mess. And I'm going, friggin' I coming back here again. People don't see that side.
Yeah, yeah. And it is as well, for me, I'm sure you're going to agree again, you know, the mental health impact you can experience from, you know, competing. So bodybuilding is a lifestyle. You stay in your own lane, you can get a lot from it. Now, when you go down the competitor route, things do change pretty quickly for some. You know, you want to win, etc., etc. Now, you know, it's not always going to go your way. It's a subjective sport, as you've spoken about your own journey. You know, you're not going to win every show. You know, maybe the genetic freaks will, but, you know, for most people, there does need to be a consideration to where are you at in life, and even that first prep, right? Like, you're taking your body to the extreme that it's never experienced before, and it's not normal, you know?
I was like Ronnie Coleman. I'll give you an example, right? When I first started bodybuilding, everybody beat me. And I mean, everybody beat me. No matter what they looked like, no matter what they didn't look like, because I was still learning and stuff like that. It got to the stage where judges, and it's a true story, this, whichever federation I was putting in, if it was very close between me and somebody else, they'd give it to the other person. And you know why they give it to the person? And they've told me this, Pat's a good loser. He'll take it on the chin. True story, this. He'll take it on the chin and he'll come back and do even better. Right? So I was known for being a good loser. So wherever I placed, and it's not a line either side, wherever I placed, I might have been upset that I didn't win, but I thought I'll just come back even better. I'll just come back even better. Do you know what I mean? So I always had that positivity, right? So I got so used to losing that when I won two of the biggest shows in my life was the qualifier for the Britons. And in the Britons, I was totally shocked. You know, because, you know, like when they call in second place, I was taking a step forward. I was taking a step forward because I'm not expecting it to be me. You know what I mean? It's a true story. I'm not expecting it to be me. So I was so conditioned to losing that when I won, to this day, right, I was British champion in 2009, and I honestly tell you, I didn't celebrate it enough because it was unexpected. Everybody who saw me said I was going to win it afterwards, but I didn't think so. And I only wish now that I could turn the clock back and celebrate it because I didn't, because I just so used to being a loser, right? Which I wasn't a loser, really, just not winning. But I mean, like, what people don't understand, Ronnie Coleman, before he won the Olympia, came 16th, came 9th, came 12th, did not finish. Lee Priest had beaten him. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, right, we all suffer, right? For me, what I was known for my strong point was I've sometimes dieted 13 and a half months. Back in the day, when you could compete at NABA and EFBB, me and Colin Wright in 1999 dieted for 11 months, and between us, true story, you can Google it, you can go by yourself, see what shows we can, because you can see anything on Google. Between me and Colin Wright, we were competing every Saturday and Sunday throughout the year. So you do the maths, or you know what I mean, over a calendar month, that's 4 times. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, we must, I think I did 22 shows in a calendar year, and Colin Wright did about 29, 30 and ended up winning his pro card at the British Grand Prix. That is unheard of now, right? And I'm on podcast now, and if you think it's bullshit, you Google it and you find for yourself. Every Saturday and Sunday. Saturday was NABA, Sunday was EFBB. We used to do a show on Saturday. Listen, sometimes we'd compete in Bradford, and on Sunday we'd drive down to London and compete. Yeah,
You loved it, yeah.
Oh, my very last show, I was overall Mr. United Kingdom, right? This is after 11 months of dieting. Colin's very last show, he won his pro card. So we wasn't washed out or burnt out. But we loved it. We didn't know who was competing against. Yeah. So I'd always had this mental toughness. I was known for my dieting, never being out of shape, always being tough, always being consistent. Toughest man. People said, Pat never phases. When I suffered my mental health, and it hit me like a brick, Sarah, all that mental toughness, all that years of experience didn't help me one bit. I tell you now, be honest with you. And I'm known for being brave and tough, and everybody will tell you that. Well, I'm telling all you people out there, bullshit. I suffered. None of the experience, none of the toughness, none of the consistency I had could help me go through this mental health. And if I'm being honest now, I'm still suffering now. And I'll show you now, I've got an oximeter with me, which checks my pulse and my heart rate. Every time I get a little bit giddy, even though I don't need it, I put it on because it just calms me down. So that's where I still am now, mentally suffering. I'm not ashamed to tell people that, because how are people going to learn? How are people going to understand? How are people going to cope if people like me, who you've said is well respected in the industry, which I found out myself, cannot be honest?
Yeah, and that is hard when it is mental health. Now, I also find there is an element still where when it's a heavily muscled male, they're, looked up to, it's like, well, these people can't be struggling. But
no, 100%.
There's going to be people listening going, they could be struggling themselves, going, okay, so this individual, 18 months is not going out the house. And I truly believe what you've just said there. If someone listens, which is why it's so important, and they go, do you know what? Maybe I've got the strength to get some help.
My father died in 1998. I was only about 31, 32 when he died. My father was my hero. You know what I mean? I celebrate him every year. I didn't cry when my father died. I don't know why I didn't cry. I don't know if because I just wanted to be strong for my family. Oh, I don't know that. I'm not going to lie to Sarah. I don't know. When I came out of hospital and I was at home, and even when I was in hospital for them weeks, and my wife used to come see me, my kids used to come see me, I cried every day, right? Just floods of tears. And I thought, where's this strong man going? Why am I crying? I even cried when I didn't even know why I was crying or what I was crying for. Because, I was on a load of drugs, loads of medication, so I wasn't in pain. Do you know what I mean? So I couldn't say I was crying because of pain. And the thing about it, suddenly I wasn't ashamed to cry. Like sometimes I'd come close to tears, and my mate would come and see me at the hospital, or a friend would come and see me, and I'd fight back the tears so they couldn't see me crying. Then after when I had the accident, I thought, no, bullshit. You know what I mean? I ain't doing that anymore. People need to know how I'm feeling. And for me to come on here and speak to you would have been the hardest thing in the world 5 years ago. Now it's like shelling peas. Don't give a shit. I don't give it to people who think, oh, I remember when Pat was this, I remember when Pat was that. Do you know what I mean? I spoke to a star who I met today in a supermarket who's been on television for years, and his local lad. And we were talking about something that's really funny. When you'll have heard it yourself say, didn't you used to be, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I still am.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? Didn't you used to be Pat Warner? Well, I still am Pat Warner. Do you know what I mean? I just, and that's what people are doing now. Do you know what I mean? It's like when a bodybuilder retires, it's like say, oh, I saw Dorian the other day. It looked shit. You know what I mean? Dorian doesn't look shit. I'm just using an example. Yeah. But yeah, this is the same person that said, fucking hell, Dorian was awesome. Dorian is awesome. Nobody will achieve what Dorian's achieved. Dorian was unbelievable. Yeah. He's just chose a different path now. Yeah. You know what I mean? He's doing something else. Why are we just remembered as bodybuilders and not as people?
Thank you, Pat, because this is
something. I am a person that bleeds, that cries, that gets upset. But all you want to remember for is my world-class back or my great delts. Yeah. I'm a little bit more than that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes as bodybuilders and any sports, I'd imagine, because it is so involved, bodybuilding, it's like I certainly forgot who I wasn't Sarah anymore. It's, oh, Sarah does bodybuilding, and I
Yeah,
lost
yeah,
myself. But it
yeah.
also it was fucking so hard to then go, what do I enjoy outside of bodybuilding? I don't know, you know?
I worked the door for 20 years, a long time, and I've done a lot of bodyguarding, looked after a lot of famous stars. I've got some really good friends in the industry. Tommy Mallet was on the OAS. He's a really good friend of mine, and he's done successfully well. For me, right, what I don't understand now is how people can perceive people for what they want them to be and not for what they are. And it's a shame. It's a massive, massive shame. You know, for me, you know what I mean? I'm no better than you, right? You know, you look at your record and you look at my record will blow you out of the water. But I would still come to you and say, Sarah, I need a bit of advice. I'm not going to go, I'm Pat Warner, I know more than her, so why should I go to her for advice? You know what I mean? I've turned down a load of podcasts with some very famous bodybuilders. As soon as you text me, I spoke to you straight away because I need to be able to relate to people. I know I can be honest with you. I know there's not going to be massaging of an ego either way. You know what I mean? But you can tell with some people, I mean, it's like I speak to some people now and they think they've got to start off talking to me by massaging my ego. You know, when I was not doing well in shows back in the day, my mates were telling me I was getting ripped off. Oh, you've been bummed, you're getting ripped off. Kerry Kayes pulled me to one side and I was on stage one day and I said, Kerry, I come third, I should have won that. He said, Pat, if I would have been judging, you got fifth, you were shit. You know what I mean? So and that's exactly what he said. Stop surrounding yourself with people that are telling you better than you are, because one thing you don't understand in bodybuilding, and you still see it now on social media, and you see it just as much as me, you're on stage by yourself. So it's irrelevant what people think. Just like if you go to court and you get sentenced, right? Your mate can't say, don't worry about it, you're getting boxed off today, you're coming straight out. You know what I mean? It's them judges that are sat in front of you that decide your fate, right? And the same with bodybuilding. It's the judges that decide your fate, not your friends, not your family. You hear me in the audience, oh, ripped off again, mobbed again, all that kind of shit. We've all worked just as hard to get up there, and it's out of our control. That's why I love being backstage.
Yeah.
That's why I love being there for competitors, because I know it's like, that's why I love being able to give back to the sport. You know what I mean? If I'm remembered for giving back to the sport more than remembered for any title I won, we used to go to Body Power every year, CMP, right? And because I work the door, and I used to see if you was, say, like Viamax or I'm just naming companies, BSN and stuff. After the seminars, after they've been in the booths all day, they used to go back, they used to have something to eat. Some used to go to nightclubs. C&P, right, we're all different ages, always stayed together, had meals and drank together. And you know why that was? And you can ask any member of C&P. They used to call it story time with Pat, right? Because I mean, when you've worked the doors for over 20 odd years, you've got loads of stories to tell. So I used to not talk about bodybuilding, just talk about what I'd done in my life, what an experience I had on the door. And some people said, oh, I went out to a nightclub the other day when we went to Body Power. It was shit. And then they come back after the thingy, and we're all still sat down at 2 o'clock in the morning talking and laughing. And every year, it grew more and more. So it wasn't no longer CMP. It'd be USN would join us. Do you know what I mean? You know, Metarex would join us and stuff like that. And for me, that was the best time that we could sit and talk about other stuff, because sometimes you need to switch off from bodybuilding. There's no worse when you've done 11 months of training and 11 months of dieting, and then you come home only to speak about what you've just done. That is where your mental health suffers. You need to give your brain a recharge. You need to switch off.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I was the worst at that. Come home, talk about bodybuilding, talk about training. My wife couldn't give a shit about training. She's never stepped foot in a gym in her life. You know what I mean? But yeah, she was my biggest fan when I competed. But my wife didn't even go to the British Championships when I won. She went to the qualifiers. She didn't even go to Britain's. She never went. She said, no, it's too far. I'm not going. You know what I mean? You know, did I want her there? Yeah, I did. But I understood that how hard the sport was, so she didn't want to go. I wasn't holding it against her. You know what I mean? Because I knew she was still my biggest fan. Your biggest fan don't have to be at the side of you. They just need to support you. Yeah. And she was also my best coach. People say, who's the best coach you've had in your life? And, you know, people will think I'll say Kerry Kays, Biggie and Morgan from Newcastle, who I absolutely love to pieces and did so much for me. I said, no, my biggest coach was my wife. And you know why? Because she was honest. She knows nothing about bodybuilding. She knows nothing about physiques. But tell me if I'm wrong when I say this. I'd stand in the mirror and I said, what do you think I look like, love? She don't know tricep, bicep thing. And she goes, you didn't have that little bit there last time, or you didn't have that little bit there last time. I don't know what that muscle's called. I don't. And I'm thinking, shit, she's telling the biggest truth more than anybody else, because she's only seeing and saying what she actually sees, even though she doesn't know what she's talking about or what the muscle's called. She lives with me 7 days a week, 24/7. You didn't look like that last year. I don't know what that muscle's called, but that's not as good as it was last year, or that's even better. And then I'd sit down and I'd go, shit. You know what I mean? She's my best coach and she doesn't even know it. Never told her while I was competing. I told her after I retired. But it's true when you think about it.
Yeah, when you think about it. You said as well with, you know, she doesn't necessarily have to be into the sport, and there's certainly mixed reviews around that. And you know, I find that, you know, there is a lot of people that experience pushback from their partner, and you know, whatever that place is from, because course, you know, your partner becomes a bodybuilder and suddenly they're fucking obsessed with bodybuilding. It's very difficult for the partner. What would you say would be a good bit of advice to, you know, if someone's experiencing their other half maybe not being supportive?
Right. You know, when your partner's not supportive, right? One thing that you and your partner have in connection is love, right? So when you love somebody, you can always find time for them to do something that you love to do together. And that makes up for the times you're not away. Because bodybuilding for me was a job, right? Right? My wife works, right? So when I got a bodybuilding, it's a job. My wife didn't like my job, didn't like me doing my job, but she knew it was a job. You know what I mean? As long as I spent quality time with her when I was with her, you know what I mean? I didn't always, but as long as I did, she was happy with the bodybuilding side. I remember me and my wife went to Body Power. I took her 1 year. She never comes because she goes, you're always too busy. But she goes, I'm going to come this year. I went. 2 reasons why she come back. Once, we got put in a shit hotel, which we never do. She didn't like that. And two, she says, I want to go home, I'm bored. I had to drive at 3 o'clock in the morning from Birmingham to Bradford, which is like a 4-hour round trip, just to take my wife home. And I didn't even stop in my own bed. I dropped off and went back, right? So that's love for me, right? She doesn't like it. I'm not going to, I could have turned on and said to her, like I saw other partners there, oh, I'm bored, mate. I can't leave till Sunday. My husband's not going to take me home and I'm not getting a bloody train. I thought, right, you don't want to be here, darling? I'll take you back. Do I want to take you back? No, I'm tired and I'm shattered. But these are the sacrifices you've got to make. You sacrifice for me, I'll sacrifice for you. Just remember, bodybuilding is just a small part of your life, right? Because if your wife was to walk out on you, or your boyfriend was to walk out on you, and you truly cared about them, you wouldn't be thinking about bodybuilding. It'd take a back seat. You know what I mean? So get balance. Get balance, right? If they don't support you, tough shit, because loving you is more important. You know what I mean? Loving your partner is more important than support. My wife smoked for years. I hated smoking. Never smoked a day in my life. Hated smoking. Did I love her less because she didn't smoke? Because she smoked? Did I, heck? It's just one of the vices that she preferred doing, and I didn't. Didn't change our relationship. So if bodybuilding's a vice, my advice to people is, that's all it is. Treat it what it is. You love the person for who they are, not what they do.
I love that. That's such a nice way to summarize it, because of course there is so much pressure around, you know, when you are a competitor, you know, there's a lot of things to think about, and not having that support, I know myself, it is very difficult. Now, on top of that, before we wrap up, I want to just keep talking to you, but of course, what would you, if someone's listening and, you know, they're getting into the sport, and of course we've spoken about mental health today, if they've done a show, they've had a rough ride, maybe they didn't get the that they thought they would, or they hoped they would, and they're struggling post-show, we know this is a time, right? What advice would you give? Would it be mainly to reach out to people that you can trust, or is there anything else?
Oh, you've hit the net. This is why we're so connected like that, because you've just. I can't say what you're going to say. What you've said it. For me, right? I don't care if you're a grassroots level bodybuilder or you're an elite bodybuilder, right? In life, it doesn't have to be your wife or your brother or sister. In his life, there's always somebody we trust. Yeah. Always. You know, whether we're having relationship problems or work problems or training problems, make sure the person that you trust the most, you open up to. Yeah. Once you've done that, because if you trust that person, you're going to listen. You know, at the end of the day, right, I trusted you today. You know, you say you've seen podcasts, and I've seen loads of stars, whether football or whatever, getting tricked. You know, movie stars going on and asking questions that they promised that weren't scripted and stuff like that. That's trust, isn't it? That's trust. You know, I said yes to your podcast straight away because I knew any question you were going to ask me or anything you said you were going to ask me, I knew you was going to stick to, right? That's trust, right? Without that, we're nothing.
I know.
So always have somebody that you can trust. Like I said, it doesn't have to be somebody close to you. That's the misconception. People think, all right, I can't just talk to a total stranger. I went to see a therapist. I seen this therapist once, and I only seen this therapist once, and I told this therapist some stuff that I've never said in my entire life to anybody that I loved, ever. And I only met this therapist once, and she got it out of me. Trust.
Yeah.
Trust.
And you do learn, right? You get burnt in life. You know, everyone gets as the shit. Yeah. I literally had a conversation with my best friend today, Wick, about this. Yeah. Why, you touched on it earlier, why can't we take people for face value? It fucks me up because I want to help people and I want to be my true self. And when I get burned,
you know why you can't take people for why we can't take people for face value? And this is what I've learned. This is my experience. The people that you can't take people for face value are having problems themselves. Yeah, right. So therefore, I've had problems myself, right? And I've shared them with you. Yeah. And people will be now who've watched it and thought, I never knew that about Pat. Yeah. Right. Until you can be a Sarah Parker or a Pat Warner, you're always going to have them problems. You're always going to have them. I don't care who you are, what age you are, what sport you do, right? We need to talk more. And you know what we need to stop more than anything else? Resenting, right? In this sport that we have no control of, there is more resent than people celebrating what people are doing, right? I don't know you from Adam. You've won a show, and I'm direct messaging people. How the fuck she won? All she is a pair of tits. You know what I mean? Judges like her, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Or he's sponsored by Metax. That's why he's come first. Why can't it be better than you? Or why can't it have been his day? Or listen, there's a lot of people I don't like in bodybuilding, right? And I can tell you that now, right? And yet somebody comes up to me and goes, I know you don't like him. What do you think he did today, though? I thought it was awesome. I'm still going to celebrate the fact that they're great. I don't need to like somebody to turn around and say how good they are. That's the problem we have nowadays. If you do not like somebody, you feel like you can't say anything good about them because you don't like them. So then my question to you is then, why don't you like them? And 9 times out of 10, them people that you don't like in bodybuilding, one, you probably don't even speak to. 2, they've probably never even done anything to you apart from be successful.
Yeah, it's tough as well, though, Pat. You probably would have experienced in life on the same sort of tangent.
On a daily basis back in the day, on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I genuinely just want the best for people. And it's hard when you get burnt, isn't it? But you have to just stick to your true self.
Stick to your true self, Sarah. People used to think I was a dickhead backstage at bodybuilding. You know what? They used to think I was a dickhead. Because when I first went backstage at bodybuilding, everybody was serious. Everybody was sat in their own corners. Everybody was looking at people who they were going to compete against, like it were a boxing match, like they were going to go at him. There's me like, yeah, mate, you want to share me towel, mate? Yeah, mate, can I put oil on your back? No, you can't put oil on my back. What if you do it too smooth? I generally thought when I walked into bodybuilding that everybody were friends.
I did.
So So I went backstage and being that happy guy, and people saying, you've just dieted for 20 weeks, you're not supposed to be happy. Why the fuck should I be happy after 20 weeks if I think I look awesome? What's the point of me being miserable when I've put 20 weeks of solid work in to celebrate the fact of how good I am?
Yes. Fucking
And you
hell.
see him backstage like somebody stole something from him.
I
That
know.
has never been me. And I think that's why I'm liked in this sport, because I'm my true self, and I want to bring other people up. If you beat me, and I don't think you beat me, you're still getting the biggest hug, because it's not your fault why you beat me. It's them guys in front of me. And then when I go to them guys in front of me and say, why did he beat me? And he turns on and says, the reason he beat you, Pat, is because he presented his physique better than you. I'll say, well, that's good enough for me. I'm not going to say what you know, but you get other people now, the social media platform, they're going on slagging off judges now, slagging off federations. And then guess what they do? They move to another federation and come nowhere. And guess what they do again? Slag the federation that they've moved to. So when's it ever going to be them? Take a good, long, hard look at yourself. But most of all, no matter how you're feeling, no matter how low you are, always speak.
Oh, Pat, you're just the absolute best. I'm so glad we did this today.
Yeah, brilliant. So am I.
Oh, thank you
So am I.
much. You are.
And keep doing what you're doing, because there's not enough. There's a lot of people doing podcasts, Sarah, male, female, celebrities, people who've been in the industry a lot of years. But there's very few people that are being true to themselves like you are. That's why I did your podcast. Don't ever change. Don't ever doubt yourself. Whether you've got one viewer, whether you've got 1,000 viewers, whether you've got 1,000,000 viewers, keep doing what you're doing, because you will reach out to people. If you keep staying where you are, right? I'm not talking about how many people, but you're more likely to get through to one person than somebody that's got 500 million followers getting any, because you're organic. Don't ever change. Don't let people think you need to change. You know, when you're reaching out to people and you're doing these podcasts, and you might look back and think, oh, I've only got 5 views, or I've only got 10 views. The 10 genuine views, 10 genuine. Listen, I know for the fact, right, The Rock's got 500 million followers, right? And out of them 500 million, he only follows about 5 people. All these people are sending him messages. They're going, oh, Rock, you're my hero, you're this, you're that. Can you wish me? He's not even speaking back to them. Right? So then they're going to go out and buy Project Rock stuff, all his stuff. Then the mate opens a business around the corner from there, and they won't even support their own mate with the C, who does think, well. Yeah. So those. So who wants followers like that?
Yeah, it's certainly.
Stay organic. Do what you're doing. You are getting a message across. I'm very well known in this industry, like you said. I'm very well respected. So all I'm saying, me and you've got me on your podcast.
Yeah, I know. It's very humbling for me, Pat. I literally remember,
you got me on the podcast.
And it's certainly, I will always remain humble, and I will always genuinely be grateful. And sometimes I think, do people really think that I'm this grateful? But I am. Speaking to someone like you, it's like, fucking hell, this is so cool. Someone I've looked up to in the sport. And that's where
7 years before I've done a podcast, 7 years, and you're the first one I've done back. And I've been suffering mentally since 2019, right? And really, really had it hard and found it hard to speak to. And yet everything that I've done in my life over these last 4 years, all the pains, all the sufferings, I've told you today. That should say enough.
Thank you, Pat. You are just too much, but just the right amount, because it can never be too much when you're your real self. And if people are listening, and even if you take that one thing, guys, staying in your own lane, if you're a bodybuilder, if you're gonna compete, do this because you fucking love it, and do this to protect yourself. Accolades are cool. Accolades are so fucking cool, but I've stepped on stage and come 5th like yourself, and I've had just as much gratitude for that, because I have excelled myself and I've done that prep,
Yeah. Good. I'd like to wrap up on this, Sarah, saying this. It's for me, I've been taught this a long time, and it's only 2 words, right? Be nice. And I'll tell you why, right? Do you know how much effort it takes to be nasty? You've got to, if I want to say something bad about you, I can't just say it. I've got to think about it. I've got to think what I'm going to say. I've got to prepare myself. You never have to prepare yourself to be nice, because it just comes straight out. Like now I'm saying nice things about you because I really, really like you. It's not hard. It's not hard. But then if I wanted to say bad things about you, I would have to think.
Yeah, and stress yourself out.
Don't stress yourself out doing it. Be nice.
Thank you so much, Pat. I really do mean it, and I
Yeah,
will.
thank you too.
I'm gonna take your advice. It's a good point in my life to really listen to what you said there, and I mean that. So, of course, we will speak soon. But thank you so much.
You are definitely doing wonderful things, right? And you have a human emotion that makes you doubt yourself. Don't stop doubting yourself. I'm not telling you to stop doubting yourself, but don't stop thinking that you are doing great things as well. Because Pat Warner's come on your podcast to speak to you about stuff that I've been through in my life. That tells you in itself that no matter what bullshit said, if you can get somebody like me to open up, right, you've done a great thing. So that's one person in itself. But one person who spent a long time in this industry and means a lot to a lot of people. I want to thank all my fans out there. I want to thank my haters, if I've got any. I want to thank everybody because you've all motivated me to be the person I am, right? I love everybody out there. Keep following Sarah's podcast. She's doing great things. And you can be honest with her, and she's humble. You can do this.
Thank you, mate. See you later.
God bless. See you later. You take care of yourself. Bye. Hey.